Welcome to Fancounters. My name's Nick. Elizabeth is off this week, so I have the duties of hosting solo, but I will bring you a great show today. I've lined up a wonderful guest. It's a dad and daughter, and I'm going to tell you about them in just a minute. Now, sometimes my stories aren't as good without Elizabeth here. She brings some more perspective to things, but we've talked about in the past how our children have sometimes wandered away from us, and we freak out because we don't know where they are. This is a situation where this past week I went to Chicago to see Phil Collins with my wife. We enlisted our in-laws, my wife's parents, to pick up the kids at the bus stop. But they have a different drop-off bus stop and pickup bus stop. So they were trying to pick them up from the morning drop-off spot instead of the afternoon one. So you remember, my kids are 6. And when they couldn't find them and they called me to verify the bus stop, and I'm like, no, you're at the wrong one. It was really freaky. So I didn't know where my kids were for like 5 minutes. And I was in the car, headed to Chicago, felt totally helpless. They walked up the hill all by themselves to our house. And when nobody was home, they went by themselves to the neighbor to ask for help. Amazing. By the time they pretty much got to the neighbor and started telling what was going on, my in-laws had found them. They had come to the house knowing that that might be where they were, and all was well. But man, that was sure a scary time, and it just serves as a reminder to have those conversations with your children if something goes wrong, where somebody doesn't pick them up when they're supposed to, or they're stuck at the bus stop and nobody came to get them. What should they do? It's a conversation worth having. It's a lesson that we learned because we never thought to really have that talk with them. They instinctively did it on their own. They did the right thing by going to the neighbor. I'm just telling you this story to encourage you to have that talk with your kids. What happens when things don't go as planned and somebody doesn't come to pick them up like they're supposed to? What should they do? But let's get to today's show. That's what you came here for. Today on Fancounters, like I said, we have a dad and daughter. They both have experience touring with Broadway musicals. Leanne Parks is our guest. She is currently playing the role of Katie on the first ever national tour of School of Rock. Leanne and her dad, Chris, are no strangers to moving from place to place, as she's just 11 years old and has already lived in 6 U.S. cities and 2 countries. Today we're going to hear about their experience auditioning for School of Rock, being on the tour, and what life is like for them on the road of one of the baddest kid rock concerts that might be coming to a city near you.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fancounters with Nick and Elizabeth on the PodFix network.
There was this mob of people, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
Stop following me. Don't come around my house. If you do, the cops are going to be at yours.
If I'm having dinner with my wife, don't sit down at my table. Don't follow me into the bathroom.
Can I take a picture? We're gonna. Oh my God.
I think this guy wants to fight me. Ended up being a fan.
I'm the only one that's ever been on Sam Jackson and lived to tell about
Well,
it.
guess what? I have a big surprise for you.
That's why we call it Fancounters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
Chris and Leanne, welcome to Fancounters. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for letting us join you.
You bet. Now, I talked about in our opening about Leanne's role in School of Rock, the national tour, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But first, as I look over Leanne's resume, there really aren't a ton of big roles where you could see joining a Broadway show would be the natural progression. So I'm just wondering, tell me a little bit about both of you and how Leanne prepared to take on such a big role in this national tour.
We use Backstage, which they give you emails regularly about open calls. And I have always wanted to act, sing, and dance. I've had singing lessons and dancing lessons, but I've never had an acting lesson before.
Wow.
So this was a very fun thing to do.
We were living in Long Island at the time, so it was a $7.50 Long Island Railroad trip into the city. So it was really an excuse for us to go in and have a good time and just expose her to what an open call is like, with no expectations.
Okay. Being on a national tour is not a strange thing for you, Chris. I've seen, based on Leanne's blog, that you were in a Broadway show, State Fair, that toured. Was that a one-off experience for you, or was that one of many?
That was from, I'm going to date myself here, but from 1995 through 2000. So for 5 years, I toured. I started with Sweet Charity. I did The King and I for 2 years. That was my last 2 years, and the State Fair, and the Sound of Music with Marie Osmond.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a fun time, but the level of tour, except for the Marie Osmond and the John Davidson one, I was on what we called bus and truck tours back in the day. So you might be in a different city every single day. You might get on a bus at 5 a.m. and drive all day, hit traffic, and then they announce we don't have time to go to the hotel. You go straight to the theater and perform. That's obviously an extreme example, but so this tour is much different, being a first national tour, and getting on a plane when we travel, and it's just it's a pretty amazing experience.
Do you think that's because there are a lot of kids involved in this tour, or is that just the sign of the times?
I think, so there's the first national tours, which are still connected with the Broadway show, if that makes any sense. And so that's called the first national, and it's equity. And after that, then other companies can buy the rights to it and do their own things. And I could be wrong, back in the day, so this was a long time ago, the bus and truck tours weren't allowed to be anywhere for more than a week, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Whereas the union tours can only be somewhere for a week. So this is an equity. So Leanne, some people work for their equity card for many, many years. This is an equity show. So it's an all-union show. So, she was handed pretty much her equity card and her musicians union card as well. It's a little different status of the tours. The first ones tend to, because it's all union, I guess, I don't know how the money works, but they charge more and yeah.
Okay. Now, Leanne, you've been playing piano since the age of 3. So would you say that playing music and instruments comes pretty easily to you?
It takes a lot of hard work, but I would say that it comes a little easily for me because I've been playing for most of my life, but it definitely takes a lot of hard work.
And how did playing the bass come about? When did that start?
So there was a local school of rock from where we used to live, Port Jefferson, Long Island, New York, where they taught us instruments, how to play instruments and how to rock. And everyone started in Rock 101. So I wanted to play the keys and sing.
Okay.
There were a bunch of little girls wanting to sing, and then there were a bunch of little boys wanting to play the keys. But one of the teachers was playing bass. So after the rehearsal, my dad asked if they need a bass player, and the teacher was like, yeah, does she play bass? My dad was like, she will by next week. So we overnighted an Amazon bass, and I've never wanted to put it down.
Wow. That's amazing. So then you started playing bass. So this was even before you knew about the School of Rock tour and maybe this opening.
Yes.
That's very cool. We've got a lot of young listeners that listen to the podcast. We feature a lot of Nickelodeon and Disney kids and stuff. So they all want to hear kind of how things get started. So can you tell us a little bit about what your audition was like for the School of Rock tour? What could somebody expect when they walk into an audition room for the first time?
I would say to practice a lot and to go a little early just so you can get a better spot, a better position in the line.
Okay.
Because you don't know how many people are going to audition for it. And when you're waiting for your audition, practice. Just keep practicing. Don't put whatever you're doing for the audition down. Just keep practicing over and over again. And just don't be crazy. Have a good night's sleep and just think of the audition. Don't think of anything else. Don't think of food, sleep, anything like that. Just think of what you want to do if you're really wanting to do the audition.
And how do you not let the amount of people auditioning against you kind of play tricks with your mind? How do you flush that out?
What I do is at the audition, I put on my headphones and I listened to the music that I was going to play, and I just closed my eyes and kept playing my bass, and I kind of just couldn't listen to anybody else anymore. My ears were only in the music.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would do is just listen to your music just to try to flush other people out.
So you did 3 auditions. What did they exactly have you do in the auditions?
On the first audition, it was to play one song on bass, sing a song, and a song that you can play and sing at the same time. The first callback, I had to learn Teacher's Pet, which is one of the songs from School of Rock, on the bass. And I also had to sing some songs from the musical. And I also had to sing the same song that I sang during the open call.
What was the song you picked? Which one did you pick?
I picked Just the Way You Are by Bruno Mars.
So word comes in, Chris, that Leanne lands the role of Katie in the touring musical. How do you guys end up celebrating? How do you tell her? Walk us through that moment when you get that phone call.
I'm going to actually let Leanne tell this story, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, Sandra, my wife, so mom and dad, we were very, it was a I don't want to say stressful. It was a very exciting time, but we weren't sure if we were going to, my wife was teaching in Philadelphia at the time. I was teaching in Stony Brook, so we were living in separate places. We were thinking about we should all live together so we could raise Leanne together. So we weren't sure if we were going to move to a suburb of Philadelphia or if we were moving to New York City, because the audition wasn't for the tour. It was just the general open call.
Oh.
And we found out much later that it was actually, the audition we went to was for the Broadway replacements. And so we had a very long time between that last audition until we found out. So it was 6 weeks of are we moving to Philadelphia or are we moving to New York City? And then they threw us a curveball with the tour, because then we moved to Philadelphia, but we moved to a really small one bedroom because only my wife will be there this year. But as far as how Leanne found out, she would like to tell that one.
Yeah, definitely.
It was a regular day at school, and after school, I came into my house after the bus ride back home, and there was a slip of paper on the dining table, and my parents said, read the slip of paper. And my mom was videotaping me, and I was wondering what was going on because my parents don't usually videotape me when I'm reading something. So I just read it. It was just a lot about the auditioning process, and I still had no idea where it was leading to. But I had like a nagging feeling in my gut that maybe I got the part, or maybe they were just trying to let it down so that I don't get really disappointed in myself that I didn't get it. All I saw was She Got Tour School Rock. And I fell out of my chair, started screaming. And I fell all the way down to the ground. And I started screaming. I was like, yay! I got it!
Did you immediately realize that it was a tour and not something that was happening in New York?
Yes.
So when you read that, you knew you were going on the road?
Yes.
And Chris, did you talk to her about what that commitment was really like? Because you had toured for 5 years, like you mentioned. Did she understand what she was about to commit to?
She was so excited about just being able to play the bass and be on the road that there's nothing I could have said to prepare her and or dissuade her or anything. In fact, at one point, because we had no idea, it'd been so long since I'd been on the road. We didn't know if parents were allowed. We didn't know, what was going to happen. And I remember asking her, I said, would you still want to go on the road if neither mom or dad can go? And she's like, absolutely. So I think it didn't matter the periphery of the traveling and the schedule and schooling. It didn't matter to her. She was just so excited to be able to be a part of it and be able to perform every day.
Leanne's role in School of Rock was a journey that started for you at the end of July, but it wasn't until I saw the School of Rock last November, and then I caught it in a different city in April, and I realized some of those kids are different. In fact, the role of Katie was played by Theo Silverman, who went on to do the show in Broadway. So now that role is yours. Tell me a little bit about how these transitions work. Do you shadow the person you're replacing before you take the stage? Is it just like, hey, I'm going to throw you up there and good luck? I mean, how do they prepare for that?
All the 8 new kids, we came in Costa Mesa. By that time, Theodora had already left to go to Broadway. She was already doing rehearsals at Broadway, so we didn't really bump into each other at all.
Okay.
And so we had 1 week of rehearsals in Costa Mesa. Then we were in Dallas for 3 weeks to finish up our rehearsals. And Fort Worth was my debut.
So a swing was really taking that role for while you were preparing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 2 swings were splitting Katie's track.
Okay. And before you took the stage, you actually were able to see the show for the first time as an audience member. Leanne, do you remember what you were thinking about when you were watching the show for the first time? Were you overwhelmed, or what were you thinking?
I was really excited to see how, being an audience member, how it would be swapped. I would be on stage in like 3 weeks, and not an audience member. So what I did was, from the beginning of the show, all I did was lean forward with my mouth open the whole time. And it was really exciting because I knew a lot of the people on stage. So I was like, oh, that's that person. And I was like, wow, they really know how to rock, and they know how to change their character.
Okay.
And so it was very, very exciting. I didn't feel overwhelmed at all.
Awesome. So you weren't nervous about
No.
end up going up there and doing the role?
No.
So your debut comes, you said 4 weeks after joining the production.
Yes.
Walk us through opening night. So even from a parent perspective, what were your pre-show preparations? Were there like nerves before you went on stage? Tell me about arriving at the theater and getting ready to go on.
I was very excited to walk into the stage door and be like, oh, this is the first time I'm walking through the stage door that I'm actually doing a show, not rehearsals. So I was very excited, but I was very nervous too. I had a lot of butterflies in my stomach. We had warm-ups. I got changed into my costume. I needed help because I didn't know what I was doing because my hands were all crazy because I was so nervous. And when I was backstage, I was freaking out. I was like, what am I going to do? What if I mess up? What if I mess up? But the moment I stepped on stage, I felt very refreshed. It was from scared, frightened, and nervous to refreshed, happy, and excited.
And were there any mistakes? Did you feel like that performance went flawless, or did you feel like, oh, I messed up, but the audience probably didn't know?
Yeah, I think I messed up like once, but it wasn't like, oh no, she broke the light. It wasn't that bad. It was just like I just forgot to do something or something like that.
Sure. Awesome. And how many times do you think you had rehearsed the role before actually taking stage? Because you had been doing it, rehearsing for 3 weeks. How many times do you think you ran through the show before you were on stage?
We ran through the show a whole time once on the stage. Then we did Act 1 and Act 2 on the stage. And so I would say that we have ran the show 5 times before my debut.
Okay.
So we have been running through the entire show for rehearsals and scenes that need work.
And that's kind of a I don't want to say daily thing, but you do rehearsals kind of throughout your tour of different parts of the show,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. And Chris, what are you doing while she's performing on stage? Are you watching the show every single time? Are you sitting backstage, checking email, or what do you do?
I want to see every show. It's very interesting because at least in this stretch we're in a different city every week, and so some cities they'll let the parents come in. Some cities the parents can come in on a rush ticket for $20 or $30. Some cities you have to buy face value tickets, and those can be $90 to $120.
Right.
So I actually have an Excel spreadsheet, and so Leanne has done 50. Last night was her 59th show, I think, and I've been to about 51 of them. Some cities, hopefully I won't get in trouble for this, but I'll either get the parents comp. Some cities I walk in at intermission, like some parents who it's kind of fun. Some parents will go to opening night and they'll have a ticket, and then we all text them like, hey, how's it look? Are there a lot of empty seats?
Okay.
And then where are they? And then we'll come in during while a lot of the patrons go out and smoke, we will just walk in. Or sometimes I walk in, I go, I'm with the production. They don't know I'm a dad or a producer at that point.
Right. And
just try to be very polite and be a ghost so no one really sees me and sit in the very back row. Or There's some theaters that the first 5 rows on either side, there's huge, like in Atlanta, the Fox Theater, the first 5 rows on the very edges were they weren't sold because they're a little obstructive view, but I mean they were great. So so sometimes in the first row, sometimes in the second row. Some cities I want to see every single show, and Leanne goes, "Are you coming to the show tonight?" And the fact that she asks me and she wants me to come means the world to me. So I do want to see the shows. I want to see as many as they'll let me come in and see.
I don't think you get in trouble for that. I mean, I'm kind of more surprised that there isn't a spot for you, even if it was in the last row of the balcony.
We always want to avoid an email from management, and there's been a couple cities where too many parents are sneaking in. But on a good way, in one city, there are too many parents are sneaking in. They will give you 1 free ticket with your badge, but you have to go up to the box office with your badge and get that 1 free ticket. But we always want to avoid, like, the last thing we want to do is get our kids in trouble because the parents are sneaking in. But we just don't know until we try. And it's like, just want to go in and see my little girl on stage.
Exactly.
I still, 51 shows in, I still cry every single show. So, every show I still cry.
Well, Chris, the song, If Only You Would Listen, I mean, how can you not cry during that? You just think of all the times that you maybe have said to your kid, I'm too busy, or, come back later, I'm working. And like when you're sitting in the audience hearing that song and those kids singing it, like it hits you right away. And I think all those memories of the times you said, come back later, rush in. So how could you not be emotional?
You're absolutely right. And Leanne comes in towards the end of that song, but she comes in with her fists clenched and does this move like if only you would listen. And every time she does, I'm like, is she conjuring up a specific time when I wasn't the dad of the year? Like, is she comes out with just this look, I'm like, she's not acting. I feel like she's really coming up with something. So I'm always like, man, is that what is she thinking about now?
That's funny. And there's stuff for kids in the show, but there's also stuff for adults. Because when Rosalie Mullins sings that song in the bar, Where Did the Rock Go? That hits adults because they see kind of their whole life experience passing them by without capitalizing on opportunities. So I think there's messages in the show all around, which is why I love it so much. I'm going to see it for the 3rd time this weekend. So
awesome. Yeah, the bar scene, when she belts out that last thing is definitely, there's these, pillars throughout the show that get you. And maybe I'm not sobbing so much as I used to at all of them, but, there's the goosebump moments where you're just like, wow, I'll never get tired of seeing that. And you're absolutely right. It could be part of the adult ensemble. It could be Lexi singing, the Rosalie Mullins tune. The Amazing Grace gets me every single show. So yeah, you're right. There's these moments throughout, and the more you watch it, you see other things. That you like. Wow, I've never made that connection before, and that gets my heart as well.
It's a genius show. It does appear that you guys have some free time in each city. I've followed Leanne's blog where she's kind of said some of the things that she's done, some fun in Fort Worth, and you've even had some family time in Atlanta. So what has been the favorite free time activity so far?
We don't really have a lot of free time, but when we do have free time, I like to either go to the pool or hang out with my friends or take a stroll with my dad.
Aw. And what's been the favorite, site that you've been able to see?
Arkansas sunset.
Really?
Yes.
I've been following the tour online a little bit, and I know that the kids like to make slime. That hobby looks like it's continued from cast to cast. So, Leanne, what's the secret to making really good slime?
The slime making has kind of died out after Dallas.
It's not cool anymore.
When we were making slime, I don't know how to make slime. I would always make putty.
Oh, okay. By accident?
Yes, by accident.
So LeanneParks.com is where you can find that blog that I keep mentioning, and it follows her along the School of Rock tour. On the blog, you've made mention of how much school time you've had to put in and at some weird hours. It's kind of a curious thing for parents like me because I wonder how you tour, how you practice and perform, and also keep up with school. So who wants to tell us about how all that goes?
There are 3 tutors on the road with us, and we do school as much as we can, but if one person has rehearsal that does school, then no one has school. So it's very tricky, but it usually works out works out at the end. But it's always it's really crazy how sometimes school is 6 hours long, and then another time it's only an hour and a half.
And are you doing an online type curriculum? Are you getting it from?
Yes, I am doing an online curriculum.
Leanne is online. Every state is different, and so on the road, there's 3 different ways to do school. You can either be full-time, you can be hybrid, or you can just do your own thing. And we were full-time, and we went to hybrid when we were in Atlanta. And all that means, so if you're full-time, you have to get 15 hours in a week. And if you don't get those 15 hours in, they can pull you from the show. Hybrid, and so the teachers here are incredible. They're absolutely amazing because they're dealing with 16 kids that have 16 different curriculums. Leanne, being in an online school already, her curriculum is built in, so they don't have to prepare that for her. And our online school is very organized, like what should be completed each week.
Okay.
And so that part's kind of easy. So we moved her to hybrid while we were in Atlanta because we were staying with some friends, and we can always go from hybrid back to full-time. We're hybrid this week too. Sometimes the crazy schedules, if they need to get that extra hour in, they might have the kids wake up early on a Saturday before a 2-show day. Being hybrid allows us to sleep in and not go that day. Our state residence is Pennsylvania, and they don't have an hourly requirement that we have to, show or prove at the end of the year. So not having that hour and letting her sleep in, I think is, helps us have helps her have a more productive day. If that makes any sense.
Okay, that's interesting. During each tour stop, the cast is involved in a lot of press events, and I know that you went through that 4 weeks of rehearsal. But was that training of how to handle these press events also, detailed in your rehearsal and training time?
No, not really. I actually had a press event this morning. They gave us rehearsals. They showed us rehearsals. They gave us rehearsals on what to perform when we're at press, but they didn't really tell us how to give an impression to the press.
Okay.
But the press sometimes themselves, they give us a packet on how to be yourself in a more mature way, I guess you could say.
Okay, so there's a little bit of coaching involved as far as how to best present yourself.
Yes.
So the kids usually do the tune we were talking about earlier, the If Only You Would Listen. And so they'll rehearse that. They'll have the music director goes, maybe some of the kids, they'll play acoustic guitar or something. So that part's very organized. But other than that, for me with Leanne, it's like, well, let's try to get a good night's sleep because so you feel good and you want to ask questions back or just be yourself, But I try to, the best thing I think I can do as a dad is not ever give her notes or talk through things, but give her, it's more like being a farmer than a carpenter, just like making sure she's fed well, she's sleeping well, so she can thrive to be, 100% herself when, whether she's on stage or at a press event.
Okay. Now, Leanne, you've been on both sides of the cast replacement because you came on as a replacement, but just a few weeks ago, you had to say goodbye to the heart and soul of the show, Rob Coletti. I loved seeing Rob in that role of Dewey Finn. Talk about what you may have learned working with Rob and a little bit more about the new Dewey who's performing with you each night.
Rob was so fun on stage and off stage. It was very hard to see him leave. But as I said, he's fun off stage and on stage. So on my Facebook page, we have our little handshake that we do on stage. And that's like a little memory just for me to see how we have grown on each other, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And the new Dewey, his name is Merritt. He is not new. He was the 3-show person a week.
Okay.
Now he's the 5-show. And he's also very fun on stage and off stage. And they are both so different in such a good way. They make Dewey Finn their own role.
There's a new person then doing the 3-day a week. Is that?
Yes.
How is that
It's
chemistry with the kids?
It's going to be a person from London. We haven't met him yet because he still hasn't flown out yet.
Okay.
So the two Dewey understudies are splitting the 3-day show. And they are awesome.
Okay. You have mentioned on your blog that Memphis is a very special place for you to perform because, Chris, you also performed on that very same stage 22 years earlier when you were touring with State Fair the Musical. It was a show that starred John Davidson. I love John Davidson. I was 1 hour away from interviewing him when he had to cancel, and then I had somebody else from the Finding Neverland cast step in at the last minute. I think the guy's a genius. Tell us about your memories of being on that tour, maybe how it compares to what you're seeing Leanne go through.
Absolutely. It was amazing. And he was incredible. I mean, he made everyone, I'll never forget because he made everyone on the cast, crew, and band just feel really incredibly special. And I remember we were in Branson, Missouri, or close to Branson, Missouri, and he was thinking about doing a show there. And he goes, does anyone want to go with me? I was like, man, John Davidson's asking someone to go see a show. I think it was the Glenn Miller Orchestra had a theater there. So we went, and he just walked to the stage door, and he goes, hi, my name's John Davidson. I was wondering if me and my lead trumpet player, he treated me like a rock star. And I'll never forget that. And he was just a very gracious and very nice and just a really, really great person. So he was kind of the highlight of those 5 years for me, him being so nice and great. And he was amazing. And we actually, when I put, there was a picture earlier in Fort Worth. They didn't have the cast picture, but they had his picture up. And I took a picture of it, and I tried to tag him. It wouldn't allow me, but then he somehow got a hold of it, and he tagged himself. So
awesome.
That was kind of cool.
Wow, that's really cool. Is this very surreal, kind of being on tour again and now with your daughter?
Yes, it is. You know, when we were backstage in Memphis, we were waiting for the company meeting, and we were just hanging out up against the wall, and literally Leanne says, Dad, is that your signature? And I was like, why, yes, it is. Let's get some pictures.
Yeah,
so
really.
That was actually very, very cool.
Those are fun pictures. Leanne, Memphis is a city where you guys started to do Rubik's Cube races. I really am not of a belief that these things can be solved. Are you any good at those?
I am pretty good at them. My record is a minute. And
A minute?
Yeah.
How messed up was that
a minute.
Rubik's Cube?
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty mixed up. My dad mixed it up, and he's a pretty good mixer.
Who's the fastest on the tour?
His name is Blake. He is a swing. His fastest time is 18 seconds.
Oh, my gosh. Can anybody do it behind their back?
Yes.
Oh, man. That's something to see in real life. Holy cow. So you guys were just in Atlanta, and you actually stayed with some family, which was really cool. What was that like, returning to a place that you had already been, living for a few years and having people come and see the show that you knew? Did that make it extra nervous for you, or how did that all go?
It was very crazy because I wasn't used to so many people watching me that I knew. But it was very nice to see so many friends and family. And it was nice to be able to live in a home for a week with dogs and a kitchen and beds. And yeah, it was really nice.
Now, on the show Fancounters, we like to hear about your fan experiences. You've posted some pictures, and it looks like there's 100 people waiting outside the stage door for pictures and autographs from the cast. When you see big crowds like that, is that overwhelming for you?
It's not very overwhelming because it makes me really happy to see how many people will give you more time, will let you sign their program, and they'll take some more time out of their hands just to come to see you and to ask you for your signature. And it's really nice to be able to high-five people, sign their program, and take pictures. And I used to be one of those people, and now I'm the one who's giving them. And I feel like how I felt is what they're feeling, so I have to make them feel like rock stars.
Aw. Do you have any crazy, weird, or fun fan experiences that stick out in your mind, like you'll never forget?
Yes. So one time we were walking. We were just walking in between shows on a Sunday in Fort Worth, actually, my debut city. And all of a sudden, this guy comes over. He's like, "Were you Katie in the School of Rock?" And I was like, "Why, yes, I was." And he was with an entire family over. I take pictures and autographs, and I'm like, "Whoa, that's once in a lifetime experience." And then the same thing happened like 2 minutes later, and then it happened again a minute later. It was really cool.
Do you think that'll ever wear off for you, thinking that
No.
that kind of stuff is cool?
No.
It's kind of a neat high that most people don't get a chance to have. So,
Yeah, definitely really cool.
have your friends, I don't know if you've seen any of your school friends since you've started the tour, but do they treat you any different since you're on this national tour?
I don't really have a lot of friends because we've been moving around a lot. But one of my best friends, her name's Melissa, she still treats me the way she has always treated me, with kindness and loyalty, just the way I think I've always been treating her. And it's really nice. It's really nice to have a friend just treating me like a friend.
I did mention that in the opening, that you have, at just 11 years old, lived in 6 U.S. cities and 2 countries. So moving around a lot, was that for like work-related things, or were you, just taking on new experiences?
Yes. It was my parents' work, just to see what we would get.
We tend to, if we see the door of opportunity crack open an inch, we tend to barrel through it as a family. So just different experiences have led us different places. My wife is a dance professor, and I was a musician. We actually met on the King and I tour. And so as opportunities rose for her, we would go ahead and move. And so, yeah, it's been pretty interesting just moving around so much.
It definitely gives you a different perspective, living in different places. What countries have you lived in?
I have lived in, I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. Then I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. Then I moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Then to Taipei, Taiwan.
Wow.
Then I moved to Long Island, New York. And now Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and now on the road.
So with your mom being a dancer, you have also trained as a dancer, Leanne, for over 3 years. Are you still taking classes or lessons on the road, or is there just not time for that right now?
I've actually been taking dance lessons since I was 3. I don't really have enough time to do dance lessons, but I do take bass lessons on the road. So I usually just get my dancing in on stage,
Okay.
which is basically jumping around.
And how long are you going to be on the tour? Does it end in February? I didn't see anything on the calendar past February.
No, my contract is for 6 months, so it ends in February 2019. We're hoping to be extended all the way to the end of the tour, which is in June 2019.
And it does look like after this weekend, you're headed to Toronto for a very long time. Is the tour really going to be there for a month?
Yes, we are going to be there for 6 weeks, and it's really exciting because we're going to be renting a condo, and my mom is going to be there, so we'll be able to celebrate the holidays together. We'll have a kitchen, a refrigerator, so we'll be able to buy a lot of food and just have a great time. That'll
be neat to be reunited with your mom, I'm sure. Is it hard to be away from her while you're on the road?
It is hard, but it's we get to FaceTime each other a lot, as much as we can. So I feel like she's always here with me, and she visits a lot. She visited Atlanta, actually.
What I love about this is, although the kids are really true professionals on stage, they seem to be regular kids in their time off. In fact, I found a snow day list of things that Leanne put together for you, Chris, which includes beating you at a snowball fight and destroying you at a pillow fight. So who is the better snowball and pillow fighter?
I am the better pillow fighter all the way. And my dad is pretty good at making snowballs and throwing them, but I'm great at destroying him by making an awesome base that's indestructible and be able to hit him with snowballs.
That's awesome.
I would argue that point, but I
No.
can't.
You would probably
It is.
lose, yeah. I always have to make the snowballs for my daughters so that they can then throw them at me. So I'm going to lose no matter what. In fact, I kind of make it easy for them. So do you guys go to Broadway shows? You've lived in the Philly and New York area. So have you been able to see shows together?
Yes.
And what are some of your favorites?
Some of my favorite shows are Wicked, Phantom of the Opera, Matilda, and School of Rock.
And Chris, how about you? Which ones do you love?
Same. I mean, taking your kiddo to see a Broadway show and watching them is pretty amazing. So the shows she likes the most are the shows I like. In Matilda, she was literally singing, watching the YouTube videos for, weeks, if not months. I mean, still, when we have time and we're get lost in the rabbit hole known as YouTube videos,
Yeah.
often, we'll be watching Matilda still. So anything that she watches and loves, as a dad, you're looking at her and you're just, when we, going all the way back to when she got to see the show in Fort Worth when we were in the audience, look, I thought she was going to fall out of her seat. And that's just, I could have shaken her and she wouldn't have been distracted by me because she was so laser focused on it. So as a daddy, when you see your kiddo so engaged in something, you can't help but, fall in love with the show as well.
Now, this show is our Black Friday episode, and you guys are in Madison, Wisconsin this weekend, and I will just be coming back. Obviously, we're taping this ahead of time, but I'll just be coming back from New York City, and we bought tickets 13 months ago to see Frozen. So I'm taking my 6-year-olds to see Frozen. They cannot wait. They've never actually been to a Broadway show before, and they keep asking about it, and I'm hoping I get the same reaction from them, that they're at the edge of their seat and that it makes a real good impression on them.
Yes.
Our listeners always want to know what our guests are watching on TV or what they're streaming. So if you were home, let's pretend, and we looked at your DVR, what kind of shows do you guys watch?
We don't watch a lot of TV, but when we do, we like to watch music videos. We like to watch sports sometimes, and we like to watch movies.
Okay, and do you have a favorite movie?
My favorite movie is Princess Bride.
I only laugh because that's my wife's favorite movie, and it's one of those that I just never got into. But I'm a nice guy. I watch it with her. So, Chris, you've got something called Healthy Hotel Snacks. Is this a blog you're doing, or do you want to talk about this at all?
Oh, absolutely. It's Healthy Hotel Hacks.
Is it hacks, not snacks?
Yeah, hacks. And so, when we were at home, we as a family, we went down this rabbit hole of trying to eat really clean and being very, very healthy. And I knew it would be a challenge when we were on the road. So we took a lot of the principles, what we were doing at home, and trying to apply them here. So it started off as just kind of a fun thing. It's a Facebook page. It'll eventually turn into a web page that'll be a lot more organized. But and some of the parents have been here for a long time. The kids are eating out so much, and that's just, even if you're trying to eat healthy, eating out is just not. You just don't know what's in the food, and you're eating, the hotel breakfast, which we've never been to. It's mostly bread, and you just don't know the quality of the food.
Right.
At our home, when we have time, I make my own bone broth. My wife makes kimchi. I make sauerkraut. We used to make our own kombucha, and so I bought an Instant Pot. And so one of our suitcases is nothing but kitchen, and we also have a trunk that we tour with that the company takes care of, and we have a lot of extra bowls and things like that. And so, when we get into a city, like this would be very typical. We got in Monday night, and I took an Uber to Whole Foods and spent about $180, and we buy really quality, good meats, all organic produce and fruits and vegetables, and we're really hooked on organic broccoli coleslaw and regular salads as well, and really good high quality mayonnaise, and mixing some sort of fish in with our coleslaws and stuff. So, and I just started doing this. A lot of people are saying it's impossible to eat healthy on the road. And so we started making videos, and almost every video ends with the taste tester, which is Leanne,
Yes.
and she does a different dance in each one if she likes it.
And have you had meals, Leanne, where you're like, don't make this again? Or is everything pretty good?
Everything is awesome.
Chris, I've kind of got a question for you. I didn't put this on the list, but it is something I kind of wanted to give you background as to why I'm asking. I worked in radio when I was a teenager. I started off like operating the board and that kind of thing. But by the time I was late 16, 17, I was on the air. In fact, I was doing live events where I would be on stage introducing very large acts, national headliner acts kind of representing the radio station. And I kind of always felt like I might not ever do anything as cool as that. And it was, for a while, I thought, well, those were the glory days of doing something super amazing in front of 10,000 people, that's never going to happen again. Do you worry that maybe, Leanne might have these feelings like she peaked too soon, or do you kind of take it one day at a time?
What you just asked it's something that's on my mind a lot. We talk a lot about the future. One of our things about being, having gratitude, you're right. She gets, every city, every town has world-class musicians who are playing in the bars or playing in wedding bands or, whatever, that might not ever get, 1,000 to 4,000 people standing on their feet every night.
Right.
And when we were in Nashville and Memphis, we'd go down to the live music place and we would just stand and, a car would pull up. I said, watch this car. And she's like, what? I said, and the car would park, put its hazards on, and you see a guy pulling out his entire drum kit. Our production hires about 100 local crew members to set up a full rock stage and everything they need. Her instruments are taken care of. Someone puts her bass on her. And so we talk a lot about what it really means to be a working musician, and how it's, we might not have, whenever we do see a really good live musician, like we met a really world-class bass player just playing in a bar, a pizza joint in Nashville. And, the guy had to drive himself, get himself there. And so seeing how even this world-class musician he just loves the enjoyment of playing. And so to that end, what we're trying to do is we're doubling down on our strength. So Leanne got onto the show as a bass player. And so the bass player in the pit on the show is also a female, which made Leanne incredibly happy. So Leanne takes lessons with her all the time, and we're going to get into some singing and acting lessons as well. But we're trying to use this, she's playing the bass about 24 hours a week in front of thousands of people, and there's always a standing ovation. And so what can we do to make sure that that's a launching pad, not just an experience, if that makes any sense?
It does.
And to make sure she loves the process of playing. Like she said, when you asked about the audition process, it's not going against the other kids. It's doing the best you can and feel good because you don't know what they're looking for. So it's not an against us, us against them thing.
Right.
So trying to instill in her, kind of going back to the farmer versus carpenter type thing, the joy of it. So if she decides just to always just play bass, she can enjoy playing bass in a band at a bar, where half the people are talking, some people are listening, but she's enjoying the process of creating, if that makes any sense.
It does. And, I didn't even catch that until you just reiterated the fact about it's really about her and how she's doing, and she stays within herself. So I think that kind of ties into this question as well. So I'm really glad you addressed it because that's a fantastic outlook and a way to handle that. Before we let you go, Leanne, I was just hoping, tell me if somebody's going to School of Rock for the very first time, what is something that they should look for, and what's your favorite part of the show?
Something they should look for? They should just try to enjoy as much as they can. And Andrew Lloyd Webber, he was very smart in making this musical, and there's a lot of nooks and crannies that you might not notice the first time. So I would say the first time you might just want to watch it, take it all in. If you want to watch it a second time, try to look for some nooks and crannies in there. And my favorite part, I love the first Stick It to the Man and Teacher's Pet.
Awesome. And Chris, what's your highlight for the show? I mean, we talked about some of the songs that hit you emotionally. Do you have a favorite scene in the show to share?
Yeah. When Leanne gets to, the last two big rock tunes where they're just really a rock band, and when she comes out and she's, bending down and just truly playing the bass at a high level, and I'm just like, and she's jumping off the drum platform, and I'm like, really? That's my 11-year-old little girl? I mean, that's, and at the end when they can really break character and, do the rock things and they're pointing after the crowd, I'm like, man, that's my 11-year-old with, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people on their feet screaming, and she's pointing at them like she's been on the road forever. And that's just, kind of messes with my mind a little bit. But that's always, if I haven't cried yet, that one always gets me.
Aw. Well, you can follow Leanne Parks at leanneparks.com and keep up with the School of Rock tour. But guys, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. We really do appreciate you being on Fancounters.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Man, how fun was that? Chris Parks and Leanne Parks. Leanne is currently playing the role of Katie on the first ever national tour of School of Rock. And if you want to see the show, it's not too late. In 2019, the first 4 tour stops are Grand Rapids, Michigan, Washington, D.C., Indianapolis, and Schenectady, New York. That is when Leanne's time on the School of Rock tour might end. Hopefully she'll continue through June when that tour is running through. But if you want to get tickets, all you got to do is visit ustour.schoolofrockthemusical.com. You can find us online on Twitter at Fancounters Live. Our big Facebook group, over 30,000 of you are hanging out there at facebook.com/fancounters. And lastly, you can email us if you want to ask a question, suggest a guest, whatever you'd like to do. You can send those messages to hello@fancounters.com. It's been a great week. We hope you join us again next week for another amazing Fancounters episode. Have a great week, everyone.
This was a podcast from the PodFix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.